Will the Sixers' death benefit Joel Embiid? Can James Harden return to glory? Is Tyrese Maxey ready to take that next step? Our top 3 reasons why the Sixers are legit contenders starts now. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Mound of Talkaround, our Sixers roundtable, where we break down everything Philadelphia 76ers, guys. Today, we are counting down. This is an optimism show. We are talking our top reasons why the Sixers are going to be legit contenders, are the team to beat in 2022-23. Joining us, as always, we're going to start down this way. My man, Mitch Kofsky of Hardcore Sports. What's up, Mitch?
Nothing much. I thought we'd be going down the shore today, but hey, I'm here talking Sixers, so let's just get right into it.
Yeah, that's not a bad consolation prize.
It's not. It's really not.
Sean of Pixel Podcast, Philly Sports. You name it. What's up, Sean?
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been surprised, seemingly like the lack of optimism surrounding this team in kind of the Sixers world. So I'm excited to throw some positivity out there.
I love it. And then we've got a special guest. He is Dave Early of Liberty Ballers, does an amazing job covering the Sixers. If you aren't following him, you'll thank me later at David Early. What's up, Dave?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining, man. I'm just going to throw this right to you. Let's jump right in here. Dave, what is your number 3 reason why the Sixers are contenders this season?
Number 3, I'm going to go Tyrese Maxey and the new depth. So I think, not getting too creative here, when you're going to look at the Sixers' top-end stars, then you got to ask yourself, what else do they have? The emergence of Tyrese Maxey was something I certainly did not expect. I mean, I thought he went from, pleasant surprise in my mind to, oh, my goodness, is he going to make, a handful of all-star teams? I can't believe how good he is. And he has really changed the trajectory, which would have otherwise been a lot gloomier going back to 2020. Remember how sad we were after the bubble, and the outlook of the team changes dramatically with how amazing he's been. So him and the newfound additions, I think that's some pretty, you put them on paper with some of the best teams in the league for sure.
I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about that moving forward. I'm going to throw it to you, Sean. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is the James Harden prove it year. I know the contract that he's getting all his flowers for taking the pay cut, which he absolutely should. But I think there's an aspect of this is James Harden's going to come in ready to prove it this year. That the 1-year deal, he has the player option as a little insurance policy. But I think he still wants to prove that he's still a max caliber guy. I don't think he likes the way that kind of the public perception has been about just how much he's fallen off. We see how clearly how serious he's taking this offseason. And I think he's going to come in ready to prove that he still has it in him this year.
Love it. What about you, Mitch? What's your number 3?
Mine is actually the same thing as Dave's. I really like this bench a lot because when was the last time we had this good of a bench on the Sixers? When was the last time? I can't think. I mean, finally we got players. We got players that we can actually rely on when push comes to shove, like PJ Tucker, D'Anthony Melton, so on and so forth. So I really like this depth. I really do.
Love it. We've got Philly Sports Talk Podcast in the house. What's good, guys? Thanks for joining.
What's good, bro?
We've got one of Mitch's buddies. He hasn't been in the streams a whole lot, starting a new job at McDonald's. So I'll be.
Oh, shoot. All right.
All right. Congrats on
Give me a burger. Then we're all good.
All right. I'm going to go with the number 3 here. I'm going to try and pick 3 that I think you guys might not have picked. And it's probably a pick that might be a little bit divisive here. But for me, I'm going a more efficient Tobias Harris. You look at, assuming Tobias is still on this roster moving forward, I think arguably the biggest win for Doc Rivers last year was, convincing Tobias Harris to kind of get that thought process that less is more and putting those touches and giving them into Tyrese Maxey. I thought Tobias looked incredibly more decisive with the basketball and faster with the basketball in that role. You look at his offense with one or less touch from the regular season to the playoffs. There was a nice increase there. I'm hoping the Sixers kind of continue to lean on Tyrese Maxey as a scorer and give him as many touches as possible. With Harden kind of being that table setter and then Tobias kind of focusing on being an elite 3-and-D role player. I think this lesser role for Tobias really unlocked him, especially as a defender in the playoffs, especially in the catch and shoot as well, where he shot 37% in the playoffs. So I'm all for finding a trade partner for Tobias Harris if the situation calls for it. But I think there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And if you look on social media, on Twitter, Sixers Twitter, like the book's kind of closed. I don't see it that way. Like I think Tobias Harris is actually a little bit underrated right now. And I know a lot of Sixers fans are pounding their chest for a 3-and-D wing, for Daryl Morey to bring in like this 3-and-D wing, when I think possibly an elite one is literally staring at us right in the freaking face in Tobias Harris if he accepts that role. So for me, I'm going to go Tobias Harris as my number 3 most, reason why they're contenders this year.
Love it.
All right, Tobias Harris. What about you, Dave? What's your number 2?
2, I'm going to go with, I guess I'm going to steal from Mitch here and say James Harden steal Sean's like bounce back, right? So I think that the idea of him on a prove-it deal correlates to what I would like to say is basically Harden is healthier. And when Harden is healthy, I mean, he's one of the best players in basketball. So father time has happened. He hasn't been fully healthy since March 2021. And so it's been a while. It'd be interesting to see how he would look. But the version that the Nets had before he got any of these hamstring injuries was 3rd in the Kia MVP ladder. So that's pretty ridiculous. People say he's not Houston James, but I would more than happily have settled for Nets James as long as it was pre-hamstring injuries. I would like to see them maybe consider load managing him for the first time in his career. If you look at the stretch of games he played in before he picked up basically any hamstring or hamstring aggravation, dude's logging like 38 minutes. I mean, they brought him back this year from the Nets. They all acknowledged that he spent his entire summer sort of rehabbing that thing. So I think if they gave him this summer off to take it seriously, shout out your boy Simon Rice, who's like literally wrote the book on hamstrings. They said he's been working with, and hopefully taking his diet and all that more seriously that we've all talked about. But if he's right, and if they're a little bit conservative and not ramping up his minutes too quickly and just playing him every single game, 38, 40 minutes just because the game's close, I think you could see a throwback year for Harden.
Love it so much. What about you? Wait, let's get some comments real quick. Sheikh Abula says it's Embiid MVP year this year, mixed with Harden prove it year, just like Sean said. Further AM says, yo, what's up, fellas? Thanks for joining. The Sixers are them this year. Tobias, Harden, Embiid, and Maxey. All right, Sean, what's your number 2?
My number 2 I'm going with is Daryl Morey. And the reason I say that is because I think this Sixers team is ready to compete, but I'm not 100% sold. But what I do trust is that Daryl Morey will evaluate and be ready to make the necessary little switches come trade deadline, or maybe even before that, if that is the case. And like, for example, the Matisse Thybulle, we continue to hear those rumors swirling. I get his value is going to kind of go down because of the contract situation. But the NBA world has kind of hit a stop since the KD stuff, since the Donovan Mitchell stuff. It feels like that there's like such big moves kind of waiting to happen. I think Morey will be ready to catch the scraps, whether it is a Patrick Beverley, a Bojan Bogdanovic, a Jordan Clarkson, or whoever it is that shakes free. I could see Morey kind of finding the missing piece still.
I love it. There's no rush. There's no rush. What about you, Mitch?
I got Tyrese Maxey here.
Okay.
Tyrese Maxey's ceiling is where is it? I can't find it. I mean, this guy's dude, he can finish top 3 in shooting. If he keeps that up, could he really be top 1? I mean, the work he puts in, and he was being mentored by LeBron, working out with LeBron and stuff. He really means it. And they try to kick him out of the court. Doc Rivers made him kick down, like, you know what, just go home. I don't want you to work anymore. But yeah, it's the Tyrese Maxey show this year.
I put up a poll on the YouTube channel. It was like 600 plus votes, and it was an over-under on Tyrese Maxey points per game, and I put it at 21.5. And a majority said over. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Like,
I don't think it's a hot take to say that Tyrese Maxey will outscore James Harden this year. And in fact, I might think that's kind of likely.
I think that's pretty likely. Mm-hmm. I think James Harden's like sweet spot. It's funny too, right? Because I feel like we keep pushing the chains when it comes to Tyrese Maxey and his upside. Because if you would ask me like a year ago at this time, I would have been like, like Tyrese Maxey peaking at like 18, 19, 20 points a game in his prime. Yeah, I think I can squash that. And who knows? So I love that choice, Mitch. Absolutely love it. I didn't put Tyrese Maxey on my list because I think having Tobias Harris as an elite 3-and-D guy kind of puts the ball in Tyrese Maxey's hands. So that's kind of a trickle-down effect. For me, I'm going to go with what Dave said and Mitch said for the number 3. My number 2 is the Sixers' depth. It is definitely the best we have seen for Joel Embiid in his career with the Sixers. The Sixers bench was dead last in points per game in last year's playoffs. They had a negative 0.2 plus minus in the playoffs, while the Sixers' net rating for the Sixers starting lineup was better than the Boston Celtics and just a few points less than the starting lineups of the Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors. We all know the Sixers basically had zero answer for when Danny Green went down with an injury. And I vividly remember watching other teams in the Eastern Conference with immense depth, immense athleticism, great shooting, just, horses just thrown in again and again and again, where the Sixers don't have an answer for Danny freaking Green. So I think the Sixers, adding pieces to this depth, to this rotation, to this second unit is going to have a huge impact. The Heat were a plus 5.6 with PJ Tucker on the court. Tucker shot 41% on 170 attempts from the corners last year. And then you look at Daniel House. He averaged 5.8 3-pointers per 36 minutes. The Jazz outscored opponents by 8.4 points per 100 possessions when Daniel House was on the court. D'Anthony Melton, 40+% in the catch and shoot, 49+% from the corners. And then you've got Harden's contract, which is official, and the Sixers still have some wiggle room to add. If this is not an A+ offseason from Daryl Morey and the Sixers, I don't know a goddamn thing. This was a great offseason for the Sixers, and leading off with this depth, with this rotation that I think is going to pay dividends for this team in 2022-23. So my number 2, I think, is Melton off the bench, PJ Tucker playing all over the place, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that is my number 2. So lead us off, Dave. What is your number 1?
Number 1 is the top end star power. I mean, the prerequisite for winning a title is often just having an MVP candidate, right? And the Sixers have one. If you ask anyone to rattle off the 5 best players in the NBA, I think these days you'd be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't name Joel. And among that elite tier, when he's healthy, I like him over several of those guys because I'm just pulling up these defensive player of the year odds right now. There's just a few too many guys above Joel's name for my liking. I'm not saying I'm going to bet the farm on this because I don't know how seriously he's going to stay motivated to win an award like that, a regular season award after falling short for MVP twice in a row. Maybe he's just like, look, let me get healthy. But if we get to the playoffs and we're healthy and he doesn't feel the need that he needs to lead the league in scoring, I mean, you've just got such an absolute beast on the defensive end who can anchor everything. And oh, by the way, as Zumhoff would say, he can get you 40. So with the additional pieces, with Joel hopefully, ideally, not feeling like he needs to score 30 a night, I think you might see him unlock a ceiling on both ends of the floor as a two-way player, and that puts them over the top in terms of being a contender.
Yeah,
love that. That's great. All right, more two-way Joel Embiid.
Yeah,
Love it.
not the other kind of two-way player.
What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I have Joel Embiid as my number one as well. And I mean, the bottom line, we can talk about the bench. We can talk about the complementary pieces, the role players, everything. The bottom line is you need superstars to win the NBA. And there's very few that I would consider better than Joel Embiid. And health is obviously the biggest factor that we would love to see him have a fully healthy postseason. I would love for him to take his foot off the gas a little bit in the towards the end of the regular season to make sure this is the case, similar to what we talked about with Harden, and a little bit of a load management thing to make sure these guys are ready to go into the offseason. But I think Embiid at his best, like there's very few guys in the NBA I feel better about going into battle with every night. And I believe in him. I believe in the team around him. And I trust that he's going to add even more layers to his game this offseason. So I'm excited to see what he comes back looking like.
Love it. What about you, Mitch?
It's a duo between Joel Embiid and James Harden. Because people are ranking them like it's a top 5, top 10 duo, and James Harden is the best player, point guard wise, that ever played with Joel Embiid. So seeing that magic go for just a little bit of time this past season, now we're going to see this whole season and see it develop and see which James Harden we're going to get. So it's a duo for me, not just Joel.
I'll put the Joel Embiid and James Harden duo.
You were trying to figure out a clever name.
I know. I'll figure out something better. I'll figure out something.
Process beer or something.
I'll work on it. Yeah, yeah.
Process beard, I guess, yeah.
We have a comment. The Sixers are garbage.
He's a Knicks fan. Just let him be.
All right, we'll just let it. That isn't that.
Jalen Brunson over 100 mil.
That's cute. That's cute. BLSG says, "What's good, gentlemen? Thanks for joining." Yeah, there's some Knicks comments going on in the chat.
My phone right now is just completely lit with Donovan Mitchell stuff from all my Knicks fan friends.
Really?
Yeah, I'm on a circuit with a few friends, and it's just all Donovan all the time. And like, what percent are they? Is there any way that the Lakers would take Julius Randle? You know, stuff like that.
I don't think they want Randall back.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
All right. My number one, like, I knew you guys were going to go Joel Embiid. Like, Joel Embiid is sensational. Like, I think that's pretty much a given at this point. So when I think of, like, top reasons, like, for me, my number one is James Harden taking that next step, that next evolution in his career. I think is that definitely something I really want to see. Like James Harden wasn't the all-pro that he was like years ago, but I think the reality is, like, if that's the James Harden you were expecting, like in Philadelphia, I think you weren't watching basketball. I think you weren't paying attention. Like, I'm just tired of hearing all this noise about how he had a bad year. That I get that he needs to shoot better in the playoffs and he needs to perform in the playoffs, but he was the only player in the league that averaged 20 and 10 last year. If you can't see that James Harden makes others better, everyone better around him, then just stop watching basketball. Harden, Maxey, Embiid, and Tobias were a +8 in 21 games with James Harden last year. They had a 15.9 net when Harden was with Embiid on the court. Harden and Maxey were a 12.2 net rating together. And I think for me, unlocking James Harden in 2022-23 comes down to Doc Rivers and unleashing him into pick and roll and his ability to create possibilities for others. I don't think it takes a brain surgeon to see that James Harden positively impacts plays for others. Like, people were screaming for James Harden to be more impactful scoring the basketball in the playoffs. Like, you look at the Sixers, they were dead last in pick and roll frequency in the playoffs. Harden's possessions went significantly down pick and roll wise from the regular season to the playoffs. That's not on Harden. That's on Doc Rivers. So I need to see a full off season, a healthy James Harden, a Doc Rivers that gets his head out of his ass and realizes that putting him with Joel Embiid and getting Joel Embiid the ball, moving towards the basket is beneficial for this roster. So I don't expect a huge increase from Harden this year, but I think if James Harden kind of evolves into that Chris Paul type of player, that like 18 points a game on super efficient shooting and assists, and keeps guys moving within this offense, I think that is going to be a separator for the Sixers becoming a contender this season. So James Harden is my number one for tonight.
Yeah, and to jump on what you said there, I think like the leap forward we're hoping from James Harden isn't massive to make. Like we're not asking for the Houston James Harden back. We know that like at this point in his career, he is the guy that runs the offense best. He's pretty much a pure point guard who can still score when he needs to. We're just asking for like the small adjustments to his game in terms of like being a more willing catch and shooter, developing some sort of mid-range game, not doing it, getting a little bit of lift when driving to the basket, I think. And we can all kind of circle that back to the hamstring if we look at it. Now, granted, who knows if that is the full case, and it could be age as well, as some of it is us looking at this through an optimistic lens for sure. But like the steps that we're hoping to see are a very attainable ask for James Harden, and like for me, that's enough reason to be optimistic.
I agree. Michael Thomas says the Sixers aren't contenders until they get a starting caliber small forward. The Sixers' last 5 years always have one critical piece missing. This year, it's the three. Where you at? Anyone? I disagree with that. I agree that they need pieces still, but like I think we'll see different lineup combinations with PJ Tucker and Tobias Harris thrown in there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have some thoughts that people are probably overlooking. I mean, you touched on it a little bit with, playing some of those guys who we'd slate in as a natural four at the three just occasionally. But I think people are overlooking DeAnthony Melton's ability to slide in and play some of the three like Danny Green was doing. I mean, Danny Green was probably just a shooting guard in his prime, but he learned the nuances of the game and he had the defensive acumen to stick with bigger players. Melton doesn't have that size. He's like 6'3", although his wingspan is huge, and he's very light, so he could get bullied. But, when you have someone like Daryl Morey, you might say, well, we don't really mind if he gets bullied. Are they going to go out of their offense to post up DeAnthony Melton? That's a win for us. We also have the help behind him, so we're not terribly worried about whatever you want to do. Like, he's not someone to target and exploit. And he has the athleticism to make up for a lot of what Danny Green didn't have. So I think that we might be surprised. I also think that people occasionally sleep on Matisse Thybulle. Doc Rivers loves him. He's going to give him chances to earn that role. If they could use him a little bit more like PJ Tucker was used in Miami, where he only shoots from the corners. Like, if you look up Thybulle's threes, most of those are 60% from above the break. And I think that drags down his numbers. If I were with the team, I'd say, look, when Matisse plays, he's got to spot up, cut baseline like Danny used to, and only shoot the open corner threes. Maybe he could shoot, 34% like he was last doing without taking the other types of shots and get comfier with that. So I think maybe they could cobble it together for now. I do see the concern, though. It would be nice if they had one more guy.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts?
We got so many wings. Like I said on my live stream earlier, I just named like 5 wings that we had. And I'm just like, we need more of a backup center, in my opinion. Like, do we go out and get like a Whiteside, Cousins, or do we just go with Paul Reed, something like that? The backup center is the most important position for me right now.
Mitch, it's Paul Reed.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like, Doc, we're okay.
Yeah, we lead the Paul Reed victory tour here.
Yeah, the Paul Reed victory tour. I'm pounding the table. It's coming. Paul Reed.
I'll make a video on it. I agree.
If anything, it's Paul Reed getting a majority of those minutes right now, at least.
Mhm.
I'm not bringing in another big. But I agree. Like if they're gonna bring anybody, it should be a 3 or a 4. But for me, it's got to be Paul Reed. Getting those minutes, backup minutes from Joel Embiid. Like he looked sensational during the summer league, especially defensively. His ability to just contest shots on the perimeter in the post and just cause havoc is just so legit. So legit.
I also just don't want Doc Rivers to have the option to like have a quick pull with Paul Reed.
Yes.
Let him play through it. Let him play through. Let him figure out. It's gonna take him. All his issues are so fixable, which is the frustrating part to me. It's like let him play through his mistakes a little bit, and I think he could turn into the exact guy we're looking for because he's not that far off.
That's 100% Daryl Morey's mindset because like if he signs another Dwight or Drummond, like Paul Reed's never going to see the court. He'll never see the court because Doc loves those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all right. Anybody else have any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think this was good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Get rid of Doc Rivers. Other than that, I'm good.
That's a different show.
Are you sure? Let's just pencil in another 36 seconds for that.
That's an entire 30-hour show. Don't get me started, Dave. All right, let's wrap this show up. Dave, tell everybody where we can find you, man. What do you got going on over there at Liberty Ballers?
You can find me on Twitter at David Early, just spelled like early morning. I actually have a vacation coming up. I'm going up to the sticks, so I'm going to try to deplug, although if there's any like slop that comes out, I'm going to be checking my phone, wondering, can we consolidate? Is there any way to get one of these guys on Utah or Eric Gordon? So I'll still be plugged in, but nothing else on the pipeline, really. Maybe a post on what I talked about saying to start load managing Harden so we don't re-pull those hammies.
That is David Early. Be sure to check him out on Twitter at David Early. Does amazing work for Liberty Ballers. If you love the Sixers, make sure you go follow that dude. Amazing stuff. Go ahead, Sean. What do you got going on, man?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1. You can check out my written work on Clutch Points and Philly Sports Network. I got a cool article dropping about how James Harden and Tyrese Maxey are the two X factors for.
Nice.
So excited for that to come out. And then, check out Pick Swap Podcast for my podcast as well, and Pick Swap Media for a couple other cool podcasts coming out there. So exciting stuff.
Check that out. And we're streaming there as well. So, share the love wherever you're watching this show. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Go check out Pick Swap Media. Go ahead, Mitch.
You can follow me on Twitter at Mitch Coxey. You can find me on YouTube at Mitch Coxey and Hardcore Sports Network. We got big things coming over there. So that's basically it.
Love it. I am Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. You can find me tomorrow getting hyped for San Diego Comic-Con. Let's go. Starting all day tomorrow. So tons and tons of streams going down tomorrow on everything Marvel and the MCU. We're going to learn a lot about the next projects and movies and shows and the mutants and you name it. It's going to be absolutely awesome. So that's starting tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be pretty much drunk and dead by like 2-3 o'clock tomorrow. It's going to be a long day. So thank you everyone for watching. Please like this video if you love the Sixers. This is our Sixers roundtable, the round mound of Talkaround. Thank you, Dave, again for jumping on, man.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Man. Yeah, anytime, man. You're more than welcome.
Yeah, happy to come back.
Hells yeah. So follow my man Mitch on Twitter at Mitch Kofsky. He is Sean at Sean_Bernard1, and that is David Early on Twitter. For Mitch, for Sean, for Dave, for myself, stay awesome, everyone.